Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Thrive Life podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about being financially faithful. How do we honor God in our finances? And so, I am excited to share with you all a lot of financial mistakes that I have made over the years and pretty much principles or habits that I've incorporated today to not continue to make those mistakes, and most importantly, to guide myself toward financial freedom. First things first, I am not a financial expert. I do not have a degree, and I have a degree. I don't have a degree in accounting. In fact, I did terrible on accounting. I'm not a CPA. I'm just a regular person. I got a regular job. And I made mistakes that regular people make. So that's the level this is going to be on. This is no investment strategy or anything like that. This is really just about how someone in the economy that we're in today has grown and learned from the mistakes that they made when it's come to money. I started my financial journey in 2019, and it was started by a friend of mine sharing a financial expert that could help you get out of debt. And so I started listening to them, listening to their podcasts. They were a person of faith, even though our ideologies don't align totally. They were someone that aligned with biblical principles when it came to money. At that time, I was on my way to being $400,000 in debt. Now that sounds like a ton of money, and it is a lot of money. $400,000 in debt is a lot of money. But I will say that half of it was a mortgage that I was recently taking on. And then the other half was credit card debt, medical bills, student loans. I think those were the other three categories. And that pretty much was the $400K. But about half, it was a little over 400. It was like 430. $400K plus in debt. Where do I go from here? Car loans too. I had car loans at that time in 2019. So unless you're bankrolling at your job and you're making like boohoo money, jobs aren't designed to bring you financial freedom. So if you have a job and you're working and you're paying your bills, yet like me have a mountain of hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, that's a cycle that's really hard to break, especially when you're still spending like your Mackenzie Bezos. For the majority of us, the majority of the population who don't have money like that, to have debt and your job just paying your bills, you're gonna be in this cycle forever that's never breaking unless you decide to do something differently. And there is no amount of money you can earn, unless you're Mackenzie Bezos, to out-earn bad decision making. So you have to get into your behaviors and your patterns that you're approaching when it comes to your money to make a change. Today, I am fully, praise be to God, I am fully out of consumer debt, meaning I don't have credit card debt. I do not owe on my car. My car is paid in full. I do not have any medical bills that are outstanding. I just have a mortgage on my home. And so that is something that I would consider a good debt, and that most people consider a good debt because my home appreciates for the most part in value. I'm not concerned about my home going down in value. So I consider myself to be debt-free, but debt-free with a mortgage. I'm not 100% debt-free. That is the goal. That is definitely the goal, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. So we have to be faithful in our finances first thing first. God has blessed us with the cognitive ability to work and perform a job. He's blessed us with the physical ability to perform whatever job we need to do. So at minimum, we must honor him in that. To be faithful in our finances, we cannot be concerned about appearances. We cannot be concerned about what people think that we have or what we don't have. Okay, so here is how I began to get out of debt. I first began to get out of debt by deciding that I wanted to live a debt-free life and believing that it was possible. I had to decide that I wanted to live a debt-free life, and I had to believe that it was possible. It takes exposure to that I didn't even think of that lifestyle. Like, I thought you just had to be in the cycle. I didn't realize there was a way to break free from the cycle until I listened to that podcast or radio host that a friend sent to me. It wasn't until then that I realized, oh no, there is another way of life. So once I realized that, I began to put it on my vision board every year. Every year I will put on my vision board that I am debt free. And it took 7 years to get there. Now, in reality, it should not have taken 7 years. And I'm going to talk about why I made some long pauses along the way. But after 7 years, I eventually got there. When you make that decision in your mind that you're going to honor God when it comes to your money, things will change. Even if you're like working at the same job, making the same amount of money, things will start to change because God sees your heart. He's seeing that you're trying to be disciplined and that you're trying to be faithful, and He is going to come in and help you in that process. When I first started, I was like, okay, I need to make a budget because I'm just spending. I don't even know how much is coming in. I don't know how much is going out. I need to make a budget. So when I started to make a budget, I can then determine what I need to pay bills and what I need to pay on debt. When I started doing that and adhering to it, money started coming. I started getting checks from closed accounts where I overpaid. My income tax return would be higher than expected. Just different things. I would get maybe like a bonus at work. Different things just started to happen. And I truly believe that it was God testing me every time. I said I wanted to get out of debt. I'm now putting into action a budget and a plan to get out of debt. Now here's God coming in and aiding me in that process, saying, okay, I see you, daughter. Now here's a little bit to help you along your way. Here's a little bit to help you along your way. Now what do I do with it? Do I go back to my old habits and spend it? Or do I follow through with what I said I was going to do and put that additional money that I was not anticipating on debt? And every single time I put it on debt. Because why? Because you know why. Because I did not want to stop that overflow from coming. I didn't want to make myself out to be a liar. So it's like, okay, God is testing me to see if I'm going to be faithful with what I said I wanted to do, and He's giving me additional resources to do it. Am I going to honor Him and put this money on the debt? And I did it every time. And then that was probably about 2.5 years of me budgeting, getting a little extra here and there, and putting it all on debt. After about 2.5 years, I had what I would consider to be like a big windfall. After about 2.5 years, at the time, I sold a property that I jointly owned, a home. It was a house. And in that sale, it was during the pandemic. And so even though the home wasn't owned that long, property values went up substantially. So those profits went to really a lot of things. They went to a lot of things. But one of the things put me in a position where the majority of my debt was now covered, at least the consumer debt. I still had, at that point, $30,000 in student loans. So I've gone from $400,000 to now a little over, to now $30,000 in my student loans. And so if you're wondering, like, okay, Ariel, you said a little while ago that took you 7 years, but in 2.5 years, you're down to $30K. How did it take 7 years if you're down to $30K after 2.5? That is a great question. I'm glad you asked. The reason why it took me an additional 4 years or a little less to get rid of $30,000 is because I carried that $30,000 around like it was a pet. In my mind, I was debt free. I'm like, car paid for, the house is gone, all the bills are paid. I just got these student loans. And for all 4 years, I was anticipating the Biden administration to take care of these student loans because I had qualified. I know there was like the 10,000 that people were talking about, but because I was a Pell Grant student, I had qualified for the 20,000 that they were going to put down. And I was like, okay, I just paid the 10. I waited 4 years and it didn't happen. And so when I started to realize that it wasn't going to happen, I started chipping away at that 30K, but it did take me some time to really pay it. Like, I just not too long ago paid it all off. It took me a while. Like, ultimately, it still could have happened if I was more disciplined in my budget. I will say after that big windfall, I got really comfortable and I wasn't as diligent with my budget. Today, I'm still not as diligent as I should be with my budget, and it's something that I'm working on. It's like when I got what I felt like was freedom, I just started like making purchases. Like, okay, I'm not doing what I used to do. I'm not living in the past. I'm not charging up all this credit card debt. I'm just paying for it now. But it's like, okay, you still shouldn't be spending all of that now. So I am a work in progress. I made progress, lots of it, but I'm still a work in progress. And I know I need to be more diligent so that God knows, okay, I can trust her with more because she's being diligent with what she has. If your behavior does not change, you will enter that cycle again, regardless of how much money you make. So this is about financial freedom. This is about not being stuck to these cycles that so much of the US population is in. We can be financially free. I desire total financial freedom. I am on my way towards it. And these next 7 habits are for others who have not yet obtained total financial freedom and are working their way toward it. So let's start with habit number 1. It's obvious for believers, at least I thought it was, but I learned that it's not quite. So habit number 1 is tithing. So I thought it was a simple thing, but I was in Bible study one night and one of the ministers was sharing that they struggled with tithing. And it shocked me because I was like, they're faithful, they're dedicated. Of course, they didn't have no problem with tithes. But at the end of the day, we all have our things that we have to submit to God for him to change our hearts about. For those who are not familiar with tithing, just to round it back real quick before I move forward, is giving God 1/10 of your income. A tithe is considered a 10th, so you give 1/10 off of your income to Christ. In theory, you give it to the church, but you're giving it to God when you give it to the church. You give a tithe with this 10%, and then you also give an offering. And then they say, the scripture is Malachi 3:10. It says, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Okay, it's very simple. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse. So the storehouse is the house of God. And test God, see if I'm not going to open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing. So as you bring tithes and you pay your tithes, it keeps the opportunity open for God to bless you. And there's other scriptures that I could read, and it talks about how not paying tithes robs God. My thought process is, every time I get paid, these United States of America take a whole lot of money that I'm not going to get back. If the government can take what is like feeling like upwards of 30%, why would I not give God 10% plus offering? Like, God, who does so much for me, as I was saying earlier, who gives me the ability to work, why would I not give him what he asks. And there are some people that argue with tithe and say it's Old Testament teaching and it's not a part of the new covenant, blah, blah, blah. Listen, you can say whatever it is you want to say. I'm not arguing it. I am blessed by it, and I will do it for the rest of my life. That's just it. It's just not a point of discussion for me. It's just not a point, I'm not going to challenge it. And for those who are like, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to give it to the church. I'm going to give it to a homeless shelter. Or I'm going to give it to a domestic violence center. The scripture says, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. You got to do it God's way, don't do it at all. I mean, that sounds really nice, all these charitable activities. However, the scripture says to bring it into the house. That means bring it into God's house. And as you do it unto God, when your heart posture is truly doing it to God, if that church is doing corrupt activities, that is not on you. If that church is not doing what you think they ought to be doing, that is not a concern of yours. Because you are giving it to God, I'm done with it. If y'all take God's money and do the wrong thing, that blood is on your hands and you are going to pay those consequences, whoever those people are. But as I gave it unto Christ, I'm good. And take it above a 10%. Like, that's the minimum. Okay, let's just start there. Okay. Let me not do too much. Start with the 10%. But when you start with the 10%, you get in that habit of giving God what is due him. Increase it. Be generous. Be generous. Okay. That was habit number 1, tithing. Habit number 2 is delayed gratification. This is a hard one. What I consider to be delayed gratification is holding off on getting what I want now to obtain what I want most. So when I respond or keep responding to what I want right now, I delay my ability to get what I want the most. Now let's take it back to finances. Listen, for 10 years at this point, I have wanted a Mercedes black GLC 300, now 23, 24 version, AMG line, okay? But what I want most is financial freedom. It's not something that I can get right now and still progress toward my goal of financial freedom. It's going to delay that goal by several years. So I have to forego the Mercedes at this present moment in time, okay? But don't be surprised when I pull up. One day, but not today. Okay, the third habit after delayed gratification that I have had to adapt is avoiding lifestyle creep. Now, this is a hard one, especially when you're someone who you've only earned a certain amount of money for so long. And as you make more money, of course, you want to maybe live in a different place, own a different vehicle, go to different places out to eat, go on different vacation trips. But there has to be a give and take when it comes to that. And I say give and take because obviously, if you're earning more, you want to be able to do something that you've always wanted to do, that you have not been able to do. But you can't put yourself in a position where you're creating a lifestyle that is at this new income. It's one thing to do a one-time expense, right? To purchase something that's a one-time versus something that is going to be continuous. For example, let's say your income increases by $50,000. Go on one trip to celebrate this $50K increase. Me, it's a handbag. That's what I like. It's a handbag. Maybe it's a pair of shoes. Whatever it is, let it be a one-time celebration expense, not something that you are continuously paying for because it's become a part of your lifestyle. If every time income goes up, your expenses go up, there's no gap being created. And so you're never going to see the promotion and the additional income you're making because your expenses are rising at the same time. So it keeps you here. It keeps you being in that cycle of everything that comes in goes out. And that's not what you want. You want, as your income goes up, you want to create a gap between your expenses. And in that gap of your income being here, your expenses being here, in this middle is your leverage to be able to either hopefully pay off debt as you work toward being debt free, if not already, or invest so that your money that you're earning starts to earn for you. As I said at the beginning, you cannot out-earn bad decision making. There are people making $300,000 a year and struggling because as their income went up to the $300K, so did all their expenses and their lifestyle. And so they're not earning enough, even though they are earning enough. So no matter where you are in your income, whether you're on the high end or you're on the lower end, you have to avoid that lifestyle creep and that desire to want more just because you're making more. So my fourth habit for financial freedom that I've adapted is if I can't buy it outright, I cannot afford it. And it's gonna be a long way to get to that one, but yeah. Except for home. Interest is of the devil. Unless you're earning it. Earning interest, that's a blessing from the Lord. Paying interest, that is of Satan. When I looked at how much interest was taking away from me and realized that when I'm making purchases and I'm not buying it outright, but I'm paying interest, I am literally throwing my hard-earned money into the trash. For what purpose? As a thank you bank, for allowing me to borrow this money and pay you back 6%, 10%, 20%, whatever it is. No. I'm going to go back to the car situation because that seems to be a really big thing in the US for keeping people bound. People out here with $1,000 car payments. And that makes no sense. I hear people often say, oh, the Lord blessed me to get this car and I didn't qualify and da-da-da-da. Let me tell you something. That was not of the Lord. That was between you and that bank officer who's getting money off of your poor decision making. There's a scripture that says, the blessings of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow. God does not want us bound to these loans by any means. And so it's not a blessing from the Lord. It is wealthy people becoming wealthier, it's banks becoming richer, and it's you being stuck paying now $100,000 for something that was $60,000, paying $200,000 for something that was $140,000. Why are you overpaying by these drastic amounts? It's because we're not realizing how much we're overpaying because they want us all focused on, oh, what's the monthly payment? Can I afford that? Stop thinking about the monthly payment. Think about, what does this actually cost today? And what does this cost tomorrow should I not pay it in full today? And if there's a drastic increase of money that you're paying now because you're not waiting to buy it later, that's you throwing money in the trash. That's not a blessing from the Lord. That's not a gift. That's not favor. It's a bad decision. And we have to call things for what it is. So I understand with some things that are smaller, it's easier to do. But we have to be like this when it comes to large purchases as well. And while I'm on this, there's another thing that I want to attack. I want to come after these modern day payday loans. Klarna, Afterpay, Affirm, all these things that allow you to split up payments on regular purchases so that you're paying down the line for stuff that you've already bought. These are modern payday loans that have been rebranded because no one's going down to the check cashing place anymore. No one's going down to the title company anymore. So they have these apps that you can just sit at home on your phone comfortably and get yourself in a debt. So for those that are watching this and you have those apps on your phone, I want you to delete them today. But Ariel, they're interest-free payments. What if you miss one? What happens then? They are getting their money somehow. Delete, delete, delete. If you have those apps, I bind them in the name of Jesus. Get them apps off your phone. If you want to buy something, wait until you can buy it in full. Okay? Buy it in full. Okay. Habit number 5 that I've incorporated is saving for a rainy day. Now, that's obvious, but I didn't do it. There's this thing called Murphy's Law, which I believe says anything that can happen will happen. And the likelihood of you being unprepared, let me say this differently. If you're unprepared for something, it increases the likelihood of it happening. So being prepared not only decreases the likelihood of something going wrong, but when it does, it doesn't throw you off course and off whack that much when you are prepared for it. So I think most people, probably finance people, would say like have a 3 or 6 month emergency fund. To me, with this economy, all the things that are going on, the tariffs, the cost of goods becoming so expensive and projected to be even more expensive, I say save as much as you can. Have a 6 to 8, maybe 12 month emergency fund. All depends on, your current scenario. And I know that it takes a long time to build up such a nest egg, but at least have the mindset of working towards it if you don't have it. And just throw it in a high yield savings account. I don't know, I'm not a finance person, but I just use a high yield because it's not gonna make you rich by no stretch of the imagination, but it's a safe way to keep your money. It's FDIC insured, and you get to earn a little bit more interest than you would keeping it at your house or in a regular checkings account. So just throw it in a high yield and allow it to build. So my habit number 6 is to aim for responsible home ownership. Our homes where we live is typically the biggest expense for most people. And it's something that you can control when you own your home versus with renting. It's with the economy, it's always going up. There's just no predictability to what you're going to be paying versus having a fixed home mortgage, which of course I know is not perfectly fixed. As your home value goes up, your taxes goes up. So I do recognize that your home mortgage rate fluctuates. But owning a home is a way to kind of get some stability when it comes to your housing expense. And I recognize that it's getting harder and harder and harder. Meaning, if I take a look at the home I purchased 5 years ago, it now sells for double. Is it worth double? No, it ain't. But it sells for double. And so that means to get into that home, it would cost me double in terms of my down payment, in terms of closing costs, and all of those expenses. And so as that gets harder and harder, it makes home ownership less attainable for people. I feel like I want to do a separate talk on this because there's just so much to it, but I'm a believer of not necessarily waiting to buy your dream home, getting into something that you can afford, and as you build interest, sell, use that equity to purchase something else and continue to increase that way. But I may do a separate video on that if people are interested, because there's a lot that you can really do when it comes to utilizing your home equity to increase your financial freedom. So let me know if y'all are interested. Okay, And my seventh tip for financial freedom is avoiding consumerism. We are sold to all day, every single day, for any and everything. More than likely, you don't need anything. There are a lot of things that we want, but when you think about it, if you have a roof over your head, if you have food to eat, if you have clothes to wear, you don't need anything. Some of y'all, TikTok got you bound. You in TikTok shop late at night, 10, 11 o'clock. You need to cut it off. You need to get off TikTok. You need to go to sleep and stop buying stuff. Oh, no. Get off of that TikTok shop, okay? And save your money. Save. Like, now more than ever, we need to save. And I understand there are people that may see this and that are not in a position to save. That's why we go back to the beginning and we start where I shared about what I was doing to get myself out of the $400,000 of debt so that now I can save. I want to be clear. I ain't balling. I ain't rolling. I ain't big money yet. Okay. But I am working and denying myself things that I want so I can get the things that I desire. I am on my journey to financial freedom. Have not yet obtained, but I'm on my journey. Maybe you like me, you've been on it and you slowed down, or you made some detours, get back on it. And for those of you who are out here balling, let me know. Let me know what I need to do to get like you, okay? Because I'm interested. I appreciate y'all tuning in to the latest episode of the Thrive Life podcast, where we're thriving in our finances in every aspect of our lives. So appreciate you watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.